Join us on a journey where we unravel the latest trends, tackle your burning questions, and explore innovative strategies that are shaping the future of compensation, all with a cup of coffee in hand. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Comp and Coffee, where we serve up fresh insights on all things compensation, HR, and rewards. And I'm your host, Ruth Thomas, and today we are taking a trip through time, looking back at how compensation has evolved from binders and spreadsheets to AI-powered tools with predictive insights. We'll explore the key milestones that shape modern compensation practices, reflect on lessons learned, and dig into what's coming next. Plus, we've got a special segment recorded live at WorldatWork, where we ask both our customers and our own HR and comp team to share their perspectives on the future of pay. So whether you're a history nerd like me, a future thinker, also like me, or just here for the coffee, probably like me, stay tuned for a rich discussion on where compensation has been and where it's headed. So for this episode, we are going to start with the where we were in terms of compensation trends and history. If you joined us at WorldatWork in Orlando and you visited our booth, you would have seen the history of compensation on the wall of our stand, something that really fascinates me. Fun fact that I'm going to kick us off with is, I don't know how many of you know that the word salary actually has its roots in the Latin word for salt, or salarium. And that's because salt was really the very first form of pay, and Roman soldiers were paid in salt because it was an expensive commodity at the time. So that's kind of really where it all started. And when I founded Curo Compensation, the name I really wanted to call the company was Salt Systems, but that name was already taken up. So we ended up bizarrely with the name Curo, but there we go. So that's your fun fact. Now, to join me in this kind of look back, I'm really excited to welcome Ashley Tamala to the podcast today. Ashley, welcome. Can you tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I lead our US-based compensation consulting team here at Hub International. Hub International is the fifth largest insurance broker in the world. And our compensation consulting team helps clients across the U.S. on a variety of compensation projects, anything from benchmarking to org-wide compensation studies and a variety of things in between.
Great, thank you. Now, neither of us, I know this is a podcast, so people can't necessarily see us. Neither of us are old enough to remember the Roman soldiers or salt, but we are going to go back a bit in time and think about what the world of compensation was like at the beginning of our careers. So if you can take me back to your earliest memory of building a compensation plan, what were the tools or processes that you were using at the time to do that?
Yeah, I started compensation consulting back when I was in grad school. So back in 2010, I was going to school for IO psychology, and I worked part-time at a human capital consulting group, and I was on their compensation consulting team. And the very first project I remember, we were working on a very large compensation study for an electric utility. And I did a lot of that benchmarking and helped develop their pay structure. That particular client, I remember they were in a pretty good spot. They already had a market-based pay structure in place. So the project that we were helping with was more about ensuring they had competitive pay ranges. But I do remember from that project, we had some online interactive benchmarking resources that we used, still had some of the good old PDF annual type surveys that were in place as well at that time. Lots of Excel spreadsheets. And I do remember with that project and some of the earlier projects that one of the key themes or trends at that time that we ran into with clients was a challenge around getting good data from clients. It always seemed like information was housed in different places, and they were trying to pull job descriptions from one place and employee data from another. And so that was always a challenge that I remember, is trying to get good information from them. So we had good information going in so we could provide good information on the back end of the engagement.
Yeah, I think I do remember a lot of Excel work. I think at the end when I was doing similar work, a lot of green binders for salary surveys.
Yeah.
And as you say, that's interesting that you say about data, because you're absolutely right. Was that at that time, employee data was much more distributed across different systems. So trying to get a complete view often of an organization, particularly if it was multinational, was really hard to do.
Absolutely.
So if you can think back to that time, what job evaluation methods or pay structures were considered best practice back then, and have they stood the test of time?
Yeah, I would say back then, so back around that 2010 timeframe, market-based pay structures really were the focus. Prior to my work in the comp field, it seemed like there was more of that initial focus on point factor, and then, around the 80s, 90s, more of a shift to market-driven work and market-driven pay structures. And then really in, 2010 or so thereon became a lot more market-driven, fully market-based. So I would say that certainly stood a test of time, at least here in the US. I certainly understand that different countries do things differently. Some even today have more of a focus on internal job equity, job evaluation, whereas in the US here, we're very market-driven in today's world. And I would say that's really stood the test of time since about that 2010 timeframe going forward.
Yeah, and I think we definitely in the US have had that shift kind of away from pay ranges to job-based ranges, and now with the kind of pay transparency, it feels like we're moving a little way back to pay ranges again in the US. Whereas in Europe, kind of where I'm based, pay grades have stayed more the test of time, and as you say, job evaluation has stayed more the test of time, I think. But yeah, definitely kind of shifts over the time in terms of how people have used them. The other one I was talking to someone while I was at conference was about broadbands. That was something that became very popular, and maybe is apart from a few sectors, hasn't necessarily stayed the test of time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people found broadbands more challenging just with how wide the ranges were, and some internal equity concerns, compression. I think the administration and management of broadbands was a potential challenge for people.
Yeah. Now, pay equity is a hot topic today. And for many of us, we have pay equity solutions that help, pay equity technology that help us to do that analysis. But how did organizations think about managing pay equity earlier on in your career, or earlier in the time you were engaging with clients?
I would say earlier on, pay equity was a lot more focused on equity at the job level. So looking at internal equity from one job to the next. So do all of our director jobs tend to lump together into the same pay grades, our managers? Whereas today, I feel like pay equity is truly more about equity at the employee level. So looking at paying like pay for like jobs, but then taking it one step further and looking at the individual who's in that role and seeing if there is actual pay equity difference based on any protected class or other characteristics. So I feel like that certainly more evolved more to focus on individuals. And I think maybe some of that is possibly coming off of those prior point factor approaches where everything was very focused on job value and job equity. And then it shifted, like I said, more to the employee. And I think too, back in those days, there was a lot more subjectivity around evaluating pay equity. When we didn't have the technology that we do today. So I think a lot of it too was more reactive in response to concerns, whereas today it's a lot more proactive, a much more strategic priority that organizations are very focused on getting out in front of rather than being responsive to.
Yeah, I think we've seen that shift in the burden of proof has kind of gone to the employer now, whereas previously it was an employee had to raise a claim. So I think with the reporting requirements that we've seen come in, particularly in Europe around, for example, gender pay gaps or race or ethnicity pay gaps, there's a more focus on that way of reporting pay equity, as you say, and looking at it at the individual level. So we've definitely seen a big shift there.
Absolutely.
Now, I mentioned green binders earlier on, but what role did salary surveys play in terms of shaping compensation decisions? Has that changed? Has it evolved from when you first started in your career?
I feel like the data itself and the importance of the data hasn't changed. I feel like when I started, data was always a big thing and very much focused on data-driven decision making. But I feel like the format and the way in which we receive that data, the comprehensiveness of that information, how customizable it is. I remember back in the day, it was challenging to benchmark jobs and look at different cuts of data where you could only look at employees in one cut of data, and you could look at revenue in separate cuts of data. And really now we can have a lot more customizable data where you can layer in multiple scope factors, if you will. So different combinations of geography, industry, and company size, whereas before you'd have lots of different rows of data in your analysis. So formatting is certainly much better, a lot more user-friendly. But still, I feel like the importance of data has always been there. We just have it's much more streamlined and easier to access and keep up to date. I remember too, in addition to all the Excel spreadsheets, there were a few platforms that we used that had a quarterly disk that they would send you in the mail. So you would have to download that to your computer to get your data updates. Whereas now, obviously, it's a click of the button and there you are with current information, or a lot of the systems to just refresh automatically. So definitely nice to not have that hurdle to jump over anymore.
Yeah. So in many ways, it's, salary data hasn't changed that much. It's still the bedrock, of your kind of like your compensation strategy. But as you say, the ways in which we access that data has probably changed. And of course, there's lots of new data available. We are in the data age. So, beyond traditional salary surveys, we have job postings data, now available, and then other providers such as ourselves at Payscale, where we're also bringing HR reported data as well. So I think that, with this massive data explosion, which in a way adds more layers of complexity when it comes to thinking about benchmarking.
Then making everything too just being so much better with, user friendliness, point and click, like the modeling is so much faster. You want to look at a pay structure with, different characteristics, different differentials, different range spreads. What if we're trying to get everybody to a certain comp ratio? Everything is much, much quicker and much easier.
So we've been doing a bit of reflection. Looking back, is there anything that you wish we'd left in the past that still lingers today?
I have a really good one for you, actually. And I thought we had already left this in the past. Like I shared, the tools that we use, most of those are online interactive platforms. We use a variety of tools for benchmarking. And I did have a client come in the other day, though. We got a new client, and it is a smaller organization. And they asked, when we were gathering all of the background data to do their compensation study, this particular individual asked, how can I send you the 400-page spiral-bound industry-specific survey information? And I was very surprised. I hadn't heard a request like that for a very long time. So that was something I thought we had left in the past. And every now and then, I guess it still resurfaces. So working on figuring out how to get that to us. So that was a new one for sure, or at least one I had not heard for a number of years.
Yeah, that's very funny. Yeah. So progress in some ways, but progress maybe not in other ways.
I think they had to end up unbinding it, taking off the binding, scanning it in. So it'll be interesting to see how user-friendly that one is when we take a look to see how that data compares side by side with our other tools we use.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I've enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for sharing that little look back in terms of where we were in compensation. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Now, let's take a quick coffee break. We're here at WorldatWork in Orlando, and we talked with some of our customers about their experience using Payscale products, what's working, what's changing, and what impact compensation strategy is having in their organizations. We also took the time to ask our own HR and compensation teams on site what they learnt whilst they were here at the conference and what trends they're seeing that will shape the future of compensation.
My name is Mindy Stone, and I'm the Senior Director of Total Rewards and People Operations. Been with Payscale for a little over 3 years now. And prior to that, worked in Total Rewards for about 20 years in the manufacturing and healthcare industries. I always think it's a good sign when you walk into sessions and it's standing room only. So I had the luxury of standing for quite a few of my sessions. And it wasn't because I was walking in late, but really it was just an overwhelming response to a certain topic, which I thought was really interesting. And I might have saved the best for last. I felt like there was a session, and I won't recall the entire title, but it was talking about job architecture 2.0. And when you start to think about what does that mean, it must have intrigued a lot of folks. So the room was filled. The room had a lot of questions. It was a sponsored session with Deloitte, and they were talking about some real world examples of where they've had to build out job architecture for their clients. But it was really broken down into really bite-sized, like manageable pieces. And so I felt like there were definitely things as I was writing and taking notes that I feel like we could take them back and use them now and even in the future, because I think job architecture sometimes requires a refresh. And I think that's why a lot of folks realized over time that it's not a one and done. It's not like I deliver it on a silver platter and all of a sudden I'm done with the project. I think there's constant iterations of that. And I think the way they broke it down, it feels like you can pick it apart and you wouldn't have to blow up the entire thing and start completely over. I'd probably be remiss if I didn't at least mention AI. And I'm sure a lot of folks have this in their responses as well. But I think we all walk into something new and we're scared. We're not sure what it means. We're not sure if it applies to us. We're not sure if we should even use it or trust it. And I think a lot of folks ended up walking away from the entire week feeling like there was just sort of this like weight that had been lifted. So they no longer sort of have to hide the fact that they're using AI for certain things, but they also know why they should use AI and where they should use it and where they shouldn't use AI. And I think that sort of laid the groundwork for the future of WorldatWork and all compensation professionals and total rewards professionals moving forward. The main thing is always remembering that your philosophy and the way in which you do compensation doesn't have to be a set it and forget it, that there's always going to be new learnings. There's always going to be somebody's doing something a little bit different or a little bit better. And I think there's an openness to that, to learning from others. And it's not a feeling of I'm stealing information, but I'm really helping, I'm collaborating. And everybody I ran into across the board was really open, and the opportunity to really share was available. And I think the networking was really strong too. So I thought that was a real positive.
My name is Michelle Maynard. I'm the lead compensation analyst here at Payscale, and I've been here a little over 3 years, and I do all of the compensation activities internally for our Payscale employees. My two favorite sessions were actually the opening session with Dr. Marcy Russell, the economist. I thought that was a very good session because actually I learned a lot of things about the economic indicators that you read, that maybe sometimes the way they're messaged in the news is not actually what's happening. And so I think she really made those indicators really a lot easier for people that are not economists to understand. And it's really important for compensation analysts to really understand what's going on in the macro environment, because that can really change your compensation strategy even in the middle of a year. Like, for example, when COVID hit in 2020 and companies had to completely pivot to what was happening in the market and the economy and do a lot of things like for compensation that we hadn't really done before. So I really think it's important for people to keep on top of that. I read a lot of publications every week trying to keep track of what's going on in the economy and the labor market. And so I think that's maybe something that some compensation analysts maybe don't focus on as much, but you really need to know what's going on out there because it's really going to define your strategy and your compensation budget for the current year and upcoming years as well. AI is like one of the big topics right now. So I did attend a couple of sessions on AI. And I do have to say that the session that our own Dr. Sarah Hillenmeyer put on the last morning of the conference was really good. And I heard a lot of comments after that because she showed specific examples of how people are using AI right now to streamline their jobs and to make their jobs more efficient. Because I feel like a lot of the sessions that we've attended on AI in the last couple of years has been like a lot of theoretical and like, this is probably what's going to happen. And these are things you should think about doing. And she like physically demonstrated in the session, like use AI to help create a job leveling structure, at least a framework for it. And then you could perfect it from there. So I did hear a lot of people commenting that they really liked those real world examples and showing you actually how to use AI in your job and not just the theory of it. So those are like my two biggest takeaways from the conference this year. I think the one thing that every comp professional should know, especially people that are new to compensation, is something that my first compensation manager told me over 10 years ago when I kind of moved over to compensation from other parts of HR, that compensation is an art, not a science. And I think people need to keep that in mind because, yes, there's all kinds of data that you have. There's all kinds of market pricing information. There's all these systems that we can use. And it's definitely important to make informed decisions and to have data to back up your decisions. But you also have to use your intuition with things because not everything can be totally formulaic. There's always exceptions for everything. So I think compensation professionals just have to keep in mind that, yes, you need to be analytical and you need to be data-driven, but you also need to be flexible as well. There's a lot more creativity in compensation than people think there is. I think some of the strategies that they can use is like if you do have access to systems such as like pay factors or market pay, a lot of what Sarah Hillenmeyer's team is working on is all of the AI data analytics and using AI to fill in where there's gaps in information. I just think knowing all the tools that are out there to help you make informed decisions, especially if you're looking maybe at like traditional sources of data and you can't find the data you need because maybe that data is not available in your local market, if you have more of a local pricing philosophy, or maybe you're trying to find data for like a niche job that's just kind of emerging. So not a lot of companies have that job yet. So maybe there's not a ton of data available. I think people just need to realize that we've kind of moved beyond the way it used to be where you had the traditional surveys from all the major survey houses and that's where you got all your data from. And if data was missing, then you're like, well, kind of go back to your leaders and you're like, I don't know. I don't have information on this. So I think people just need to really, embrace the fact that I think AI is here to stay, well, whether we love it or not. So let's embrace AI for the positives that it can bring and how it can make our jobs easier, just to find information that maybe was not easily found before.
Okay, so my biggest takeaways from World at Work this year, I think we can reflect on what the key themes were: the integration of AI into reward programs. We talked a lot about AI, the continuing importance of pay transparency, and then this issue of managing compensation spend against the background of economic volatility that we're facing, and particularly with things like increasing benefit costs, putting more pressure on compensation budgets. And then there was a lot of discussion emphasizing the significance of aligning total rewards with organizational goals in order to continue to drive employee engagement and retention. I think overall, if I took one takeaway, it's that the role of managing compensation has probably never been more complex than it is today. In terms of one thing that I think every comp pro should know, I think it's really preparing yourself for the change. I think one of the good things about the World at Work conference is it also focuses on how you shape yourself as a total reward professional. And there are lots of sessions that help guide you through that journey. And I think looking at some of the sessions here this week, Focusing on core future skills like analytical thinking, resilience, flexibility, and agility, I think are some of the things that I think we should be thinking about in terms of preparing for the new world of total rewards. In terms of a strategy or tip that I think comp pros should be thinking about today to make more confident compensation decisions, ultimately it's data-driven decision making is key. We've always been good at data in compensation, but now our role needs to be more than just data processing and more about unlocking insights from data and to address the challenges that we're facing in today's world of work. It's really a time for us to think about shifting the role we play in organizations up the value curve and shifting from compensation transactors to strategic innovators. I've talked about that shift before. I think lots of great takeaways that were had this week at WorldatWork.
My name is Morgan Print, and I work at St. Charles Health System, and I'm the compensation manager. Well, doing everything manually in Excel was always troublesome because it just resulted in a lot of manual errors, as well as just it was very, very time consuming. So by moving into Payscale and using the market pay tool, we've been able to eliminate all of those manual errors and really just save so much time that the team was otherwise spending. We've been able to also reduce our headcount on our team. So if we've had somebody that's left the organization, we've not necessarily had to backfill them, or we've been able to utilize a team member and push them over to another part of HR where they can be of service to another team. So we've been able to have some cost savings from an FTE perspective. What other tangible wins have we had by utilizing market pay? AI functionality has been extremely useful in terms of market matching. So less of that searching for market matches and having the tool recommend those matches for us. I would also say that the survey participation cycle is just that quick now versus taking several weeks or months to manually do all those matches and VLOOKUPs with Excel spreadsheets to get our survey participation ready each year. Payscale really helps us with our confidence and our compensation practices because we can do things, I would say, just in time versus maybe waiting or spending several weeks or months on analysis. We can do things just in time as we have requests from leaders or executives to pull information on a certain group of jobs or certain department of jobs. It's much, much easier and saves us a lot of time that way. Working with the Payscale team has been great. They've been extremely responsive, extremely kind. No question is a dumb question, which has been very, very nice. So they have had a lot of patience with us. The tangible result of using Payscale is that it really does just pay for itself. I would say that the service that is being provided and what you're paying for it is less than what you would pay for a comp analyst FTE.
Alyssa Furlong. I work at American Equity, and my title is Compensation Program Manager. Some of the challenges that I experienced before using Payscale would be just the massive amounts of Excel spreadsheets and not having data in one place and having different ways to cut data in an easy way. Some of the tangible wins that I've seen from partnering with Payscale would be, and pay factors specifically, would be the total reward statements. We rolled those out last year, so it's been 2 years now, and it's been well received by employees. I don't think they've seen on paper the value that our benefits bring. So to be able to put a dollar amount behind that and even just bullet some of the things they don't realize that we offer and have it sent to them and be available for them to review, I think was a big win for us. A way that Pay Factors has helped me build confidence in my compensation practices would be all the data just readily available and being able to cut it and look at comparisons or even location differences and have all the data there and being able to support and back up my decisions and recommendations that I'm making. Working with the Payscale team has been great. No complaints. I've been using Payscale and Pay Factors specifically for about 5 years. So throughout the different products that we've used, I've had experience of working with quite a few people. All been friendly and available and make recommendations on how we could do things better, which is something I appreciate. Something that we're looking forward to that Payscale is going to help support is we're rolling out Job Description Manager. Right now, our job descriptions are everywhere, and mostly in Word, but we have a lot of work to do to get them automated, and I'm really excited to make them available to managers and then likely employees as well. That's not a level of transparency we've had in the past, so I'm looking forward to that. Something that I'm looking forward to with using a more advanced platform with Pay Factors is we're going to be able to load our third-party job or market data in the system, and so that we can not only use pay factors data, peer data, third-party data. So we have it all in one place. Historically, I've looked at pay factors data and then kind of on the side looked at some of those niche surveys, but to be able to have it in one place and then apply the cuts will be really nice. And to be able to have those job descriptions in there that will help us with the matches as well, like a holistic process. I'm really looking forward to.
What were some of the challenges we experienced before using Payscale? We had nothing really. We had to participate in salary surveys manually, and we were doing 5 back then. And then anything to come up with merit and structure would meant we were doing in Excel. So very time consuming and no really clearly defined process to it. So some of the tangible ones we've seen since using Payscale, I have a very small team. We're a very small company, so we wear a lot of hats. So Payscale, Pay Factors has helped us to save time. All of that survey participation is now done automatically. We download something, we upload it, and it's done. We don't have Excel spreadsheets anymore. Everything's done within the system. And then another big one we had was we moved all of our job descriptions within the system as well. So that's all automatic now. Managers can collaborate and route for signatures automatically. We don't have to use inter-office mail to send paper forms around anymore. So huge time savings. Payscale has been fantastic. We've been around, I don't know how many years now, but for quite some time. And they have always been there when we've had questions, helped us with demos in the system, going through reports that we can use, and then offering additional support as we need it. Payscale helps us to develop data-driven decisions, so it helps us make sure we have equitable pay and we're on track with our compensation program. It's been a great relationship. Like I said, I don't know how many years we've been with Payscale now, but it's been quite some time. And the customer service is fantastic. When we need help, we get it. We're partnering with new programs all the time, and new products that are coming out are always very innovative, and looking forward to what's coming in the future. We just partnered with Payscale on a new program with their comp expertise, and we are looking forward to documenting all of our compensation policies and procedures, which has been a long time coming, and then working with the team at Payscale to communicate effectively with our managers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the coffee break, catching up with some of the other attendees at WorldatWork. So thanks to everyone who joined us for that segment. Now we're going to think a little bit about where we're going. We've talked about the history of compensation. Let's think about the future. And I am joined by Sarah Hillemeyer, who is our Senior Director of Data Science. And I like to coin her our AI Queen. We were both at WorldatWork, and Sarah was speaking about AI. And Payscale's innovations. And we both really enjoyed the event. So Sarah, thanks for joining us. You've been on the podcast before, so hopefully some people may
Good to be back. Thanks, Ruth.
What was your kind of overall feeling about WorldatWork? Was that your first WorldatWork?
That was my second WorldatWork.
Second.
I was not in Cincinnati last year, but I was in San Diego 2 years ago. Really exciting, of course, to be surrounded by comp people and total rewards people that care so much about the work that they're doing, work that I think is incredibly important for the world, and to see the curiosity and the sharing that happens at these conferences. This year was the first WorldatWork that I'd been to where I could fill my entire agenda with talks about AI if I wanted to. I did go to some other things to break it up, but there was a nonstop AI set of sessions that I could attend, and that's an exciting shift to see in this domain.
Yeah, definitely some real use cases. I mean, obviously we've got our own roadmap here and our own innovations happening here at Payscale, but definitely this is becoming something that is being incorporated into compensation management solutions now. So, I mean, you mentioned AI. How do you see it having impact on compensation in the next 5 years? Where do you think we'll be in 5 years' time?
I think one of the first things that's really going to happen, and this comes from the leapfrog advances in large language models. One of the things that large language models have gotten very good at doing is writing code. And we typically think about that as something that software engineers do to generate a SaaS product or a program. The other place that code is really, really helpful and useful is in querying databases. So one of the things that I think will shift over these next few years is that those LLM tools will democratize the access to data analysis and processing. And so you won't need to know SQL, you won't need to know Python, you won't need to know R to be able to query a database like the database of your own company and look at the compensation trends that are happening within that database, or look for inequalities, or however you want to slice and dice it, you'll be able to do without knowing those tools that the analysts and the data scientists and the BI teams usually leverage. And I think that'll be a big shift. The next part that I think will be transformative, and we're on this path already. So this one is not a crystal ball, like this is the way the train is going, is a pretty easy prediction, is that AI makes it easier to ingest different kinds of data, normalize them, and process them. And so things like within PayFactors, the peer auto match model, which allows us to take real-time feeds from HRIS systems and get them matched and normalized to our taxonomy and processed such that we can turn around that data and give a near real-time view of the market using AI tools. That wasn't possible 10 years ago. That was all being done manually, and it was taking a year to aggregate a survey and get it turned around. So all of that is getting faster and faster. And that means that the data sources that we think of as being very, very trustworthy will still remain trustworthy, but they'll be able to be more real time. So we'll have a better pulse on the market in compensation and from lots of different angles, whether it's that HRIS data feed or processing job descriptions and postings or offers, and all of that's just going to get faster. So you're going to get a more real-time view of what's happening. And then go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
go ahead. No, you go.
The last area that I think is ripe for AI innovation and value, not just in terms of efficiency and getting the work done faster, but using AI to help make better decisions, is around the data-driven ways to extrapolate and interpolate from data that exists into the scenarios and the edge cases where there isn't necessarily data, whether it's because you're hiring the first nurse in a town like Flat, Alaska, where there's nothing to compare to, using AI and AI tools to help make those, do that triangulation in a very data-informed way, I think will be a game changer for compensation.
So I guess there was kind of two follow-up questions I've got to that. One is, so do you think that most of the work that, say, a compensation analyst does today will be automated by AI in 5 years' time?
Depends on what you mean by most of the work. I think that the process of matching jobs and finding benchmarks, that's going to be mostly automated, or you'll get human in the loop tools that make it like doing a Google search, where you've got pretty good search results and maybe you're deciding there. That's obviously not the only value that compensation analysts bring. So I think that part and the crunching numbers, that all of that is going to get more and more automated. The tools are going to get better and better. There's still value that we need compensation analysts for, certainly in terms of making a decision about, let's say you were trying to decide how many different geographic policies your company should have, right? Should you have a different pay for every city that you have an office in? Should you have a tiered system where maybe you have a high cost of labor tier and a low cost of labor tier? Should you have 4 tiers? That kind of scenario modeling intersects not only with the numbers. AI will be able to tell you what the cost is of those things, but also your strategy of what's important to your business and what's the human cost of changing this policy. All of that is still a very, very human task. And those compensation analysts that can learn to adapt to and use the tools that help make the the grunt part work of the job easier and faster and better are poised to make much better recommendations back to the business about those kinds of scenarios and trade-offs that involve not just the numbers, but that intersection with their company's goals and their company's pay philosophy, and help make guided decisions about those pieces.
Yeah, 100% agree. And in that context, you've got a world of complexity as well, because there's more data available. We're probably going to keep the circle of data that we're going to start to use to help inform compensation decisions is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so having the ability to have AI enable processing the data and also enabling the workflows for you so that you can then, as you say, spend your time thinking about the business scenarios that, the problems that you're trying to solve for the business, I guess, is that's where you'll probably be spending more of your time, which, is exciting, I think, for anyone doing that role.
I hope so.
So we have been talking a lot about confidence here at Payscale. We unveiled our new brand at WorldatWork, and helping organizations achieve confidence in compensation is one of the key themes of our new brand launch. So as our data queen, how can data help build confidence in compensation decisions for both HR leaders and employees?
Yeah, I love this question. In part because it's like asking a whale to describe water. I think of data as the backbone of decision making for most businesses, and compensation and HR has been one of the slower areas of business to really latch on to that in the same way. But I think as you speak data as a compensation person or CHRO, you're now speaking the lingua franca of the business. You're saying, here are the trade-offs that we're making, and here's why. And that can be a nice way to make your case and to help make good decisions in the business. And I think the pieces that will really help build that confidence in the decision, rather than how that relates to the business and conveying it back, are that more dynamic and real-time view of the market, so that if you're paying X, that X is where X is on the within the market range. Am I a high payer for this role in this location? Am I paying a little bit below the midpoint of this role in this location? And even just knowing that piece can help unlock some of the other signals within your business. If you know that you're paying below the midpoint and you're seeing high attrition, for instance, that gives you a place to inspect and say, okay, well, am I losing folks more than I expect because the pay is low, or is there something else going on here? So I think it gives a map of certainly can help guide and make better decisions. That's the first part. But also, if you're making decisions based on data, there's a record of that and a record of why you've made that decision, which is inspectable and also repairable. If you decide, okay, I'm going to pay at the 60th percentile because I think it will do X for my business, and then you don't see that outcome, by taking this data-driven approach, you can go back and say, actually, it didn't result in the outcome that we wanted. Let's pay at the 70th percentile, or let's knock it back. And we think maybe we don't need to overpay from the midpoint of the market. So it becomes a framework to not just make better decisions initially, but also to iterate on those decisions in a way that is very, very visible and transparent to other parts of the business that are accustomed to making decisions in that way. Seeing what the data says, making a hypothesis of some sort. It's not always like a classic hypothesis. And then making a decision and change based on that, and evaluating whether that change was what they expected. And if so, then you continue in that direction. And if not, you go back to that underlying foundation of, okay, what did we miss? What assumptions were baked into this that weren't necessarily measured, or we didn't understand had impact here? And you get to reevaluate that from that framework. That's a lot harder to do when you're going on intuition and gut than it is on data, in part because we're all using little different pieces of data to make those opinions, but we get attached to them. And you end up in a more interpersonal conflict of, well, I believe this and I believe that. If you can show your thinking and reasoning of, I believe this because I've seen X, Y, and Z in the data, then it's much easier to influence that decision. And it's much less personal. It's much more, I believe this because of this, gives people a chance to interrogate that thinking a little bit and to make sure that kick the tires on it and understand what that means, and to guess and check those assumptions without necessarily having it be your personal belief that's under attack. So I think it facilitates much better decision making and iteration and progress, not just a single decision.
And in the age of paid transparency, much more explainable. We're having to explain the decisions that we're making, not only in, normally that always used to be to managers or to senior leaders, but we're also having to explain that to employees now. So I think that explainability helps to fuel data conversation, fuel pay conversations, and kind of give you more confidence in being able to tackle those conversations.
Great point. Yeah.
So you were talking about some of Payscale's new product innovations at WorldatWork. Do you want to kind of give us a quick overview of some of the new and exciting functions and features that we were sharing with the audience at WorldatWork?
Sure. We got a great reception to sharing these in the demo showcase at WorldatWork. Lots of standing room only. People were turned away at the door, and a great follow-up conversation back at the booth later. The types of innovation that we talked about come in a few different categories. One was around improving the experience of searching and matching to various data sources within our products. If you're trying to price your client jobs against whether it's our data sets or a data set that you've loaded from a third party into our system, making that process just easier and saving time there. So an efficiency tool, not necessarily making it better, but making it faster to find what you need in those large catalogs of jobs. The other area of innovation that we talked about at WorldatWork and we recently launched is a tool that helps make better decisions. So now we're not talking about just efficiency, talking about being more effective in your role. And there's a data product and an experience that are tied together right now. The experience is called Explore, and it's a feature in PayFactors. If you're from a tiny company, you can sign up for a free trial on our website and see it for yourself. If you're a larger company, you might have to go, and you're a PayFactors customer, you already have access. There's some middle ground. If you're a large company that wants to try it out for free or for low cost, there's some options there. But the way that Explore works is it leverages the underlying data set from Peer, which is a near real-time data product that's collected via HRIS data feeds from our customers and aggregated and normalized to a taxonomy with about 5,000 jobs in it. What the Explore feature allows you to do is search that taxonomy really easily. We call it a semantic search. And instead of needing to know what the job titles are or keywords from the job description, there's a really nice toolbar, search bar, where you can type, I help dogs and cats, and you get animal groomers and animal technicians and vets. If you type, I write code, you get programmers. Hilariously, if you write makes money, you get investment bankers and traders. So much easier to find the jobs that you need. And then the results page gives you a market data range for any of those jobs in any location in the US. And there are 30,000 of them to choose from, cities and states and metros and regions in any industry that you want to look at and any company size. So whether you want to look at company size by the number of employees at the company or the revenue of the company, or especially if you're in finance, the assets under management, you can filter that way. And it will show you not only the market data, the market range for that job in that location and industry and company size, but also the different components that help make up that market range, like how is location impacting the pay of this role? How is the industry that you chose impacting the pay of this role? How is the company size that you chose impacting the pay of this role? And there's some really neat modeling under there. We actually just filed a patent on it because we had to invent new math in order to do this really well in the context of compensation. And some things that stand out are that with this product, we're learning those impacts of location and industry and size at the job level rather than a job agnostic differential that applies to all jobs. And it becomes really important for jobs, especially on size, where the company size doesn't necessarily impact the pay for all jobs equally. If you're working at a huge company as a compensation analyst too, you make about 4% more than if you work at a mid-sized company. If you're working at a huge company as a compensation director, you make about 20% more than you do at a mid-sized company. So it really doesn't impact all jobs equally. I call it the Walmart effect sometimes. A cashier at Walmart doesn't make a lot more money just because they work at a big company, but the CEO of Walmart makes a lot more money than they would at a mom and pop grocery store. And so the new math that we have invented and patented helps us capture that variability more accurately and give you a really good job-specific view of how company size and location and industry affect pay for those roles. So I was really excited to be able to share it at WorldatWork. We had a lot of excited current customers, a lot of excited new customers. We've seen a huge amount of traffic to the tool over the last month, much bigger than basically anything else we've ever launched. Thousands of people a week are checking it out. So I encourage you to check it out too. And then tell us what you think if you get a chance.
Thank you, Sarah. So that's Payscale Explore experience, which you can find in Pay Factors and you can find as a freemium experience on our website. And Payscale Explore is powered by Payscale Verse, which is our new AI augmented data set. Well, thank you very much, everybody. That's a wrap on this special episode of Comp and Coffee, where we took a walk through the past and a glimpse of the future of compensation. We spent time reflecting on how comp used to be managed with manual spreadsheets and big green folders of salary data. And now we've kind of had a look into the future where we're starting to think about how AI, predictive analytics, and pay transparency are really reshaping how organizations think about rewarding their people. Thank you very much, Sarah, for joining me in this segment. And thank you to all of you who came to say hello to us at WorldatWork. We loved meeting with you. We loved hearing your ideas, your questions, and we loved sharing all the innovation that we're creating here at Payscale with you. If you have any questions or any thoughts about future content for Comp and Coffee, you can email us at coffee@payscale.com. Thank you very much.